Good evening. This is Canyon City's February 1st regular city council meeting. We're happy to invite those in the audience and on Facebook Live and Channel 191 to our meeting today. We'll go ahead and start with roll call. Cindy via Zoom, may you please do the honors.
Councilmember Dennehy.
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez. Absent. Councilmember Jaquez.
Here.
Councilmember Meisner.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember B. Smith.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick. Absent. Mayor Smith.
Here. And we'll now have an invocation by Doug Fortner from the Grace Family Church. You can go ahead and come to the podium, please.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Let me pray for this city council meeting this evening. Our Father God in heaven, we thank you. We recognize you as the maker of heaven and earth. We thank you for the very breath of life that we enjoy this day. And as the city council meets tonight, God, I just ask for your just blessing upon each one, wisdom in what is spoken about, decisions that are made. Father God, thank you for each council member that gives of their time to serve this city. Father God, just use this time, Lord, for the betterment of the city, Lord, and in decisions that are made. I pray, Lord, that they are made ultimately to honor you, to glorify Christ. And in Christ's name, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would now like to invite Kevin Marushak to the podium. He is here from Canyon City High School. I handed out to each of the council members a handout from the high school that he'd like you to reference. Go ahead, Kevin. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate the opportunity to come down and just speak with you a little bit. So I'm here just to kind of share some information and potentially answer some questions in the flyer that Ashley had shared with you. At the high school, I'm part of a program called the Tiger Pride Link Crew. One of our main roles is to include students within the building, and one of our projects this year that was kind of asked of us by our administrators was to do something similar to the Adopt a Senior program that we saw last year. Our senior class has had a year like no other. They were part of last year, and they were juniors last year and had a lot of their junior year wiped off, and then all of their senior memories pretty much aren't there. So what we have done is we've put together a program to help just support those seniors. It's basically like an Adopt a Senior that we have. And what we wanted to do within our program is we're just here to kind of share information more than anything. Part of our goal was within the pride that we have at our school, we are founded on the belief that everybody is somebody. And so what we want to try and accomplish with our program is line up one sponsor for one senior, kind of like a one-to-one deal, so that every senior feel like they're somebody, and there is somebody out there in the community who is willing to sponsor them. So it's a pretty big task as we're start this program. We're at a senior class right now of, I think, 204 was the last time that we visited with the counselors. And so we're looking to just spread information in our community for individuals, families, groups, businesses who would be interested in sponsoring a senior and just helping them recognize and encourage them to get to graduation in May. One of the things that we want to do with our program is to help ensure that all of our seniors get sponsors. We don't want to launch our program till we have met our sponsorship number. So we kind of have a big task in front of us here. We spoke to the school board to share all of the information there with them. We've spoken to the paper. I was on the radio on Friday to just spread information. We sat with Carrie Canterbury on Thursday afternoon. There's an article coming out in the paper as well to just spread information and encourage people to consider to support one of these seniors as we go forward into graduation. What we want to do is once we hit our sponsorship number of 200, we'll round it off at 200 right now. At that point, then the idea is to do a random draw, basically, of seniors to sponsors. So we talked to some of our senior leaders with this, and they kind of like that idea of like, gosh, I'm just going to get paired with somebody in the community. Maybe it's a couple, maybe it's a family, it's a group, maybe it's a business, but they were really appreciative of the sponsors who are going to be a part of this program to step forward, and potentially it'll be a stranger. Part of the goal is to gift the seniors once a month if we can get launched by February, and just small gifts, 20 to 25, potentially each month. If we have to delay, we will, but what we'll do is we'll have a senior survey that all the seniors will go ahead and fill out. And then once the sponsors are paired with their seniors, that senior information and survey sheet will go to those sponsors. So then they can go through and what are the seniors' likes, what are their favorite restaurants, what are their activities, what are their hobbies. And one of the things that we want to try and do is make this a community effort as well. So we want to encourage our sponsors to support the seniors by shopping locally and gift certificates. A lot of the seniors at lunchtime, they'll head down to the Owl. So it's like, oh gosh, so maybe if the Owl is on the information sheet where my senior likes to go eat, then we can potentially go down and pick up some gift certificates there. So we're here to just share some information, answer some questions if there are some out there, and also to announce at the school board meeting, the Pride, our organizational group that we have at the high school, we sponsored 5 students on that night. And we're here tonight also to sponsor an additional 5 students as well in the senior class. So we're trying to do our part within the school community to get this going. And there are different types of sponsorships. One of the things that's in the Google form where you can sign up to be a sponsor is there's options available to, you can just purchase and deliver straight to the seniors' houses. You can purchase and just drop off at the high school, and then our link leaders will handle all the delivery. Some people can just choose to be an anonymous donation. We've already had one of those. It was an individual in the community said, you know what, I want to be a part of this program, but I don't have the time right now to go out and do some of the shopping, so we'll take care of that for that person as well too. But once we do all the pairings, we're going to send that anonymous donator the information sheet from their seniors so they can be involved in that. And then our hope is as the seniors leave this year, potentially at graduation, it's open to the public, and potentially the sponsor and the senior can meet out on the field and get the picture taken and do one of those things and just kind of meet each other in person potentially if they're not able to before then. So that's what our program is about. That's what we're here for. And again, just to try and spread information amongst the businesses, amongst the community as well, and also potentially answer any questions if there are any. I know that was fast. I keep waiting for one of these lights to go off. I'm not sure which one's the 3-minute one or the 5-minute one. Ashley told me a little bit how this works. So.
You're doing great. Are there any questions for Kevin? I think it's an awesome program. I've already signed up to sponsor a senior.
She is in, yes.
And I'm excited to do that. Like you said, for a lot of these, it's a rare moment in childhood and growing uphood when you get to really focus on yourself and growing and finding your interests. And for a lot of those kids, the end of their junior year and senior year, that was their time when it was finally their turn to be the starter on the varsity team or to be the lead in the play. And now their turn is gone. And it's really sad.
Yeah,
and anything we can do to show them support and community love is awesome. So thank you for taking the lead on that.
Thank you. All of our contact information is found in the sheet here. There are some hyperlinks in the document that I shared with Ashley. Also, the sponsorship form is hyperlinked in there as well, too, if anybody's interested.
Right.
So.
I just encourage Council 2. You all have contacts outside of Council 2 of other associations that might be interested in sponsoring seniors, and encourage you to spread the word.
Is there a social media link that's up that we could possibly share?
There is. The Pride, which is our all-inclusion group at the high school, it is on there at the Pride page. And so that's kind of our main social media. We are on Twitter. We're on Instagram as well, too. So if you just search on Facebook, The Pride, there'll be a black and white paw print that'll show up. And then what we've done is we've pinned this information sheet to the top of the Pride page. And then that Pride page is all things high school. We just try and shine a light as much as we can everywhere with all of our students in our school.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, thank you for having us.
All right, we'll go ahead, and Ryan, if you could please review the consent agenda.
Did you want to do council member announcements first?
Oh, well, yeah. Council member announcements.
Other than the Tildy situation that I think is much more public today than it was Saturday, or at least accurate public information. You know, we're working on it, I guess, with DOW, and until we get a decision from DOW, we really can't do much. At least relative to salvage of the antlers and skull and what have you.
Yeah, and we're working with DOW, or CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, on transition of any antlers and treatment of the antlers and skull, and actually spoke to Lisa, our museum director, Lisa Stutz, this morning about that, and it does sound like there is an interest from the museum to preserve that part of Canyon City's history, and we're going to continue to work with CPW through that process.
The unfortunate part of that whole thing, none of the hide was salvageable.
Correct.
So, ideally, particularly for a mount, it would be nice if we had that unique hide, but it's not salvageable. So all we've got is skull and antlers.
Councilmember Smith?
Well, since Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick's not here, I'll go ahead and announce that we have a general government meeting on February the 3rd at 5 o'clock and a URA meeting at 6.
Excellent, thank you. I'd also like to announce that the governor should be making official, hopefully later this week, the new dial on how to determine where we are on the dashboard, and hopefully our numbers will, unfortunately, they're starting to uptick, which is making me a little nervous. But our numbers should get us back to yellow again instead of orange, and have opportunities to open up even more. And I think we're all really excited for that, and want to give a thank you to the SDP chief for doing an excellent job in getting our community vaccinated as quickly as possible. We also have a Facebook Live with the mayor this Thursday at 4 p.m. We have an entire panel that is going to be presenting. Lisa Stutz from the museum will be one of those, and she's an important part of that discussion because Canyon City's been experiencing kind of a historical renovation revolution, and there's a lot of really exciting things that are happening in that department that some new tools have made that possible, and we're going to talk about those, and that includes business owners and property owners that are doing some renovations as well. And then also on February 11th, I want to invite City Council, if you're interested, at I believe it's 6 p.m. We are going to start having some meetings to plan our 150th year anniversary celebration.
Starting at 5:30.
5:30. And we have invited a number, probably close to 30 different members of the leaders in the community who represent different functions and events to participate in that planning committee. And just want to make sure as council members, you're welcome to attend as well if you wish.
Are we working with any of the territorial folks?
That's a good question. I don't remember if we have them on the line or on our list or not, but certainly like to reach out to them.
Yeah, it's not on our list, so we need to do that.
Because
So-
Their
Miss Wolf,
150th is
the lady that helped with trick or treat or what?
trunk or treat.
Yeah, trunk or treat. She's on that committee. I'm kind of on that committee too, but I mean, it's just tough for me to meet, but, because they've got their own, I say own, but they've got their celebration coming up also that they're trying to, and at one time there was some discussion about mixing that together in where we could.
Right. And I think theirs is this year and ours is next year, right?
think-
They're off by a year or two, I
Yeah,
think.
1871.
Yeah.
It'd still be nice to have them involved, though. That would be
Absolutely.
an important part of the community. And just seeing, like you said, trying to coordinate, everyone's going to want to do something special, and we're going to see if we can coordinate and collaborate it. So at the beginning, before 2021 even starts, we already have our ideas set, and possibly on a frequent basis have different types of celebrations.
Well, they started 2 years ago, but we got shut down with COVID, so.
Yeah, our goal was to start planning last year as well.
Yeah. Maybe they'll want to pause theirs and join ours for
We did our
next year.
first meeting almost, I think, a year ago, our first official meeting, because it was right before COVID.
Well, All right, I think, are there any other announcements before we move on? Then we are ready for a consent agenda.
All right, Mayor and members of council, item 7A is to approve the minutes for the regular city council meeting with the executive session on January 19th. The special city council meeting, which was the state of the city on January 7th, and the vision committee meeting on January 20th. 7B authorizes the mayor to sign a letter of support for Fremont Economic Development Corporation for the Colorado Workforce Development Grant with a city match of $10,000. 7C authorizes the city administrator to sign a professional services agreement with Ascendant Management for the Balanced Scorecard Strategic Plan Phase 2. That's the cascading to all the departments, not to exceed $13,000. 7D authorizes city administrator to sign a recreational license agreement with AJet Ventures LLC. We had 2 of those come before city council a couple meetings ago. This is the 3rd one. 7E authorizes the mayor to sign a water service contract for Central Colorado Concrete at 3167 Maple Lane. 7F awards bid 3920 for the compensation classification and job analysis study to Graves Consulting in an amount not to exceed $40,000. 7G awards bid 4520 on the Anson Rudd House exterior drainage improvement and porch rehabilitation to HW Houston Construction in an amount not to exceed $38,000. 7H awards bid 1621 sodium chlorate award to Evoqua Water Technologies in an amount not to exceed $24,560. 7I awards bid 1921 repair parts for water distribution system to Core and Maine in an amount not to exceed $200,000, and 7J is to receive and file the list of bills.
Councilmember Meisner.
Madam Mayor and Council, I had asked that we move item F from the consent agenda to like maybe before item 10A on the discussion agenda.
Any other questions for from council?
Just a clarification, as I continue to question Section J, the reimbursements or disbursements. On page 2, that list of expenditures there, based on our previous conversation, those checks have not been cut?
Correct. The only time we cut the checks ahead of a council meeting, or like the second meeting in December when we didn't have a council meeting, in order to get people paid, we went ahead and processed those ahead of time. These checks don't go out until Tuesday after a council meeting, once they've been approved and agreed upon by city council.
So I understand the logic maybe in control at one point with some previous councils, and I don't.
It's actually written into the charter, I believe.
Is it charter written?
Yeah, yes, sir.
So how does that differ from credit cards? I mean,
It's the way it's worded in the charter. I believe it's written as a writ, meaning checks. So any checks have to be approved by city council before they get sent out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Jim, would you like to make a motion with the amendment?
Oh, sure. Madam Mayor and Council, I move that we approve the consent agenda amended with moving item F to the discussion agenda before item 10A, and the consent agenda as written and
Second.
amended.
There's been a motion by Councilmember Meisner, seconded by Brandon Smith. Any discussion?
I do have
Counsel-
just a quick question. I thought, did we wind up approving the Humane Society agreement? I thought we still had an issue with some verbiage there somewhere.
No, we brought
We
that back.
approved it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got the Chamber of Commerce agreement and Golden Age Center agreement should be coming back next week.
Maybe it was the chamber we postponed. Okay, thank you.
Any discussion? I'll call the vote, please.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Yes.
Councilmember Jaquez.
Aye. Sorry.
Councilmember Meissner.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember B. Smith.
Aye. Aye.
The motion carries. We'll go ahead and move on. Thank you, council. To 9A, and that's a public hearing for Fremont County National Bank on 532 Main Street.
Administrator report?
Yes.
I can be quick.
Sorry.
There's a lot of just kind of updates, departmental updates and project updates in the written report. A couple of things that I had written down as extra that weren't in this report, the mayor has already covered, or Councilman Meissner has, regarding Till Day and the 150th. Also, a reminder to City Council that we have the joint City Council Planning Commission meeting on Wednesday at 6 o'clock, next Wednesday, the 10th.
Is that Zoom?
It will be available via Zoom.
Okay.
Yep.
I just didn't know if it was, if we were going to be here or.
Yeah, the consultants will be zooming in. Yep. Wednesday, the 10th, it's the first draft or first part of the draft for the comprehensive plan.
I got the impression it was all Zoom. It's okay.
Okay. So the question was that joint meeting all Zoom or hybrid?
Yeah, it's going to be all Zoom.
All
Okay,
Zoom. The
that's what I
10th is
thought.
all Zoom. Okay. We will now turn our time over for the presentation for 532 Main Street, the public hearing. Lisa, you want to take it from here?
Up there. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The subject of this public hearing concerns the Fremont County National Bank building located at 532 Main Street on the southwest corner of the intersection of 6th and Main Streets, lots 15 and 16. The current owners of the property, as Step Back in Time LLC, have applied for designating this property as a local historic site on October 10th, 2020. The Canyon City Historic Preservation Commission held a public hearing on January 4th, 2021 to review the application submitted by the property owner and to hear the findings of fact provided by staff in regards to the property's historic significance to Canyon City. The original building on the property, which has been recently uncovered, was built in 1920-21, making it more than 50 years old. The owner has removed the neo-mansard roof and the modern facade, revealing the building's original exterior, which had been added to the building in 1974-1975. The Fremont County National Bank, later renamed Fremont National Bank, operated in this building for almost 90 years. It closed its doors in 2009-2010. The bank was associated with several prominent citizens of Canyon City who either served as bank president or served on the bank's board of directors, including bank president at the time of the building's construction, George F. Rockefeller, board director John H. Harrison Avenue is named after him, board director Dr. W.T. Little Sr., and in recent years, local businessman and philanthropist Darrell Biggerstaff became bank president in 1982 and the bank's chief executive officer in 1990. Former Colorado State legislator Harold McCormick also served on the bank's board of directors in the 1990s. The style of architecture of the building is late classical with a temple front facade that was almost exclusively used for financial institutions in the early 20th century and is the best example of this type of, or this form of building in Canyon City. Is the only building of this type in Canyon City's downtown historic district to have all the same original architectural elements, the terracotta coins, which are those right there, surrounding the brick, the twin Greek Corinthian columns in the front, there, and the decorative trim underneath the cornice, which this picture doesn't show very well, but right in here. And the decorative panels under the front windowsills and the distinguishing pilasters surrounding the front door, which actually probably shows up better in this one, right here. And under these findings of facts that I just stated, the property meets the criteria for designating as listed in the city's ordinance, section 123090. The building is at least 50 years old. The site is identified with historic personages or groups or which represent important events in national, state, or local history. The site represents an association with notable persons. The building exemplifies specific elements of an architectural style or period, and the building demonstrates superior craftsmanship or high artistic value. As I mentioned, the Canyon City Historic Preservation Commission held a special public hearing on January 4th. The commission voted unanimously to sign a resolution recommending City Council approve to designate the Fremont County National Bank located at 532 Main Street in Canyon City as a local historic site. This public hearing provides the Canyon City, or City Council, the opportunity to determine whether it is appropriate to complete the process for designating the Fremont County National Bank as a historic site. That concludes the staff report regarding the nomination to designate the Fremont County National Bank as a local historic site. I'm happy to answer any questions. I realize it's on the discussion as well. I was hoping that Mr. Tezak, who represents Step Back in Time, would also be here, but I don't think he is.
Councilmember Meisner.
Thanks, Lisa. Just curiosity,
Yeah.
that black paint or whatever it is, are they going to be able to remove that?
I'm not quite sure. I hope so. I really do. That is original.
Really?
The elements are, but not the black.
Right.
So I'm hoping they can. If not, then if they can keep it, the original elements, it's still there. So.
And some of that front door has been changed too, hasn't it?
A little bit, yes. I think they had some, when they removed some of the 1970s facade, there was some damage to the base of the columns, and I think some damage to the brick on the west side of the building. But all in all, most of the elements are still there,
Right.
which is amazing, considering what could have happened when they did that
They
in the
actually probably helped
1970s.
preserve it by covering it.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I don't want to misspeak, but I know, speaking to Mr. Tezak, he said that the facade, the outdoor facade, is actually going to be easier to repair than the interior.
I can believe it.
Do we know anything about TZAC's schedule for starting up renovations again or anything like that?
I believe their permit through the building department has been approved, and they're actually working on an application to go before the Urban Renewal Authority as well.
Okay. Councilmember Jaquez, did you have something you'd like to
Yeah,
say?
this is just for the building itself, right? Because they own a lot of property there too, where the drive-through and all, that, but we're only
Yeah.
talking about the building.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So, is there any further discussion? Then I would like to close the public hearing. We do need a call for a motion, but what is that motion?
So we'll actually move on to item 10. Let's see. It would be 10A is the second reading of the ordinance.
Okay, and that would, then we would close the hearing after that. Okay, that makes more sense. So do we have any public comment before we move on? If not, is there a motion for the second reading and adoption of Ordinance 3, Series of 2021?
Which isn't labeled.
Councilmember Dennehy.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to pass on second reading and adoption of Ordinance 3 of a series of 2021.
So the motion was by Councilmember Dennehy, seconded by Councilmember Jaquez. Any discussion? And I'll call the vote, please.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
That was an aye, Cindy.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember B. Smith?
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you, City Council. We are now going to move forward to item number F on the consent agenda, and that is for the bid number 3920, the compensation, classification, and job analysis to Graves Consulting in an amount not to exceed $40,000. I'm going to turn the time over to you, Mr. Stevens, to enlighten us on this.
All right. This is a compensation survey and study. I was thinking it was last year, but it's actually been since 2019. The city attorney prepared a memo for city council regarding the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act. And under the act, or under the recommendations to be compliant with the act, one of the recommendations was to do a compensation analysis to make sure that we're compliant with that. We do have Ivy Morris, the HR director, on the Zoom call. And we also have, of course, our city attorney who may be able to answer any other questions regarding to the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act. Ivy, do you want to talk a little bit about the process and this particular study?
I sure can. So the study will start with the consultant conducting job analysis of all of the jobs that we have in Canyon City. That will involve in-depth questionnaires as well as interviews with the employees to make sure that the consultant has a complete understanding of what our jobs entail, and also gives us an opportunity to update some of those job descriptions which haven't been updated in many, many years. Once that is complete, they'll take that information and then prepare the compensation. What they'll do is they will go out to market, they'll look at comparable jobs, they'll look at other comparable organizations within our geographic area so that we can come up with a competitive salary to help not only attract but also retain our employees. And then from there, they will help us put together that compensation table and help us come up with a plan to transition into that new salary. It'll be a multi-year, and we're not expecting to just implement all of the suggested salaries at once. It'll be phased out probably through, I'd say, 2 to 3 years.
Any questions from council? Councilmember Meisner.
So I'm now assuming because of some new information, or what seems to be new, is that this survey, I was under the impression during budgetary hearings that this survey was motivated as a review for compensation purposes, but now it seems to have shifted gears, and its motivation and justification is from equal pay.
Well, yeah, the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act was always part of it, but yeah, it's certainly looking at compensation as well. That's part of it as well.
And part of the discussion during the budget hearings, if I recall, was how do you implement those adjustments that need to be made. And we're still faced with that challenge. And I'm still going to tell you, you're wasting $40,000 for somebody to tell us that we're not compensating our employees, and particularly our, lack of better term, the guys that are working in the ditches. Those people are not adequately compensated. And we're going to do a study to confirm that. And we could be using the money for that study for compensation purposes.
Yeah, I guess, some of the response to that is, the study is, that's a one-time fee, putting it towards salaries, that's ongoing. Just because you put it to the salaries 1 year, you still have to come up with those, that money on a year after year basis. Part of the implementation of this is coming in with a phased approach. That's part of the scope of work for implementing this across the entire city. You mentioned the guys in the ditches. We know that we have issues with the police department as well, and making sure that they're compensated fairly. Overall, we do want to make sure that we have a third-party recommendation to make sure that we're checking that box with the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act as well.
Ryan and Ivy, what is the imminent need for the job analysis of city positions and job classification studies and the FLSA classification? That was something new.
I'm sorry.
That was something new that I didn't realize was going to be added into this.
Yeah, I think we talked about the compensation study. All of these things kind of go along with it, and the job analysis is the detailed work of looking at the jobs in order to do that compensation study. So when they're looking at a job description or doing that job analysis to come up with the job description, that way they're comparing an apples to apples with another community or another job at the same job in a different community. Ivy, would you add anything to that?
Nope, I think you've covered everything. It's just an opportunity for them to, evaluate the current job duties to make sure that they're still accurate and applicable, and making sure we're getting the education requirements and the experience requirements correctly, because that impacts the compensation piece of it.
And it also says to identify and recommend responses to any outliers in the organization. And do you have any reaction already of what those outliers probably are?
No, I think that's part of going through the study is, determining whether or not we do have positions that are paid more than other communities, or, paid significantly less than other communities. That's part of the reason for going through the study, is to see if we can identify those outliers.
Okay. Councilmember Meisner.
So the last survey that we did, when we got all done with it, there was this reasonable recommended increase, because the survey was based upon some areas that the council at that particular point in time felt really wasn't relevant to Canyon City. And they went back and did another survey, if I recall correctly, of areas that were much more similar to Canyon City. And they make some references here in terms of how they're going to choose those comparative locations and cities. But I would think that before we go into this, that we've already predetermined what areas we think are comparable, versus an outfit in Denver telling us what they believe is comparable, because I really don't think most people in Denver have much of a comprehension or understanding of the communities south of Denver.
Don't disagree with that at all. I think, I spent time in the HR consulting field before I, got into municipal government and economic development. I agree with that. That was one of the questions that we asked the short list that we interviewed, how they go through that process. The reality, though, is that you can pick communities that are similar size and similar structured to Canyon City, but just because you're looking at a Durango or a Montrose, they don't have the same factor as being right next to a Pueblo or a
Right.
Colorado Springs. And, we asked questions about that. I believe, based on the answers, Graves Consulting was the one that we felt the most comfortable with, from that standpoint. It's not just looking at small communities. We have to look at the situation
Right.
of
Situation.
where we're at and the proximity we are to other job markets. They're also going to look at, within particular job fields, administrative roles within the city are competing with administrative roles in DOC or the hospital or, private companies as well. So, all of those types of factors are going to get worked into this compensation study.
Thank you, because I was going to mention that, especially for our CCPD, who often get snapped up from Fountain and Pueblo and our nearby cities. That's part of who we need to be competitive with.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to compete on a salary standpoint, but, it is the reality that we face with our proximity to those larger markets.
Councilmember Meisner?
So there seems to be some verbiage in some of this information that suggests that if they do an optional compensation, there's an additional charge in terms of selecting specific areas. Is that the case or not?
Ivy, do you want
I
to
mean,
take
they
that
talk
one? I'm
about-
not recalling that.
They talk about them determining, in conjunction with working with the city, in appropriate market areas. But there was also a mention in here somewhere of there being a charge if the areas that they suggested the city wasn't happy with. I don't remember where
And
that's at.
that's part of the reason why we asked some of those questions up front. So we want to make sure that we're part of that process as they're selecting those areas.
Does say on page 2 that they will determine that by working closely with the leadership to
Right.
determine the geographic area and organizational makeup of the market.
And then, just in closing, that graph or that table that's on page 5 is obviously out of date.
All right, if there are no other questions or discussion, I would like to entertain a motion.
You don't have to.
And the motion would just to be to approve the contract. So the motion would be to award bid number 3920 to Graves Consulting.
Madam Mayor, I don't know what the time limit is to wait for an emotion, but if we're not going to have a motion, then we'll have to table this matter.
I'll make a motion so we can just
Councilmember
move on with
Jaquez.
this thing. Madam Mayor, members of council, I'll make a motion that we approve staff's recommendation to the bid to Graves Consulting LLC at a price not to exceed $40,000.
There has been a motion
I second.
and a second by Councilmember Dennehy. Any discussion? Do you have any final words you want to give, Ryan, before the vote?
No, I think I've covered everything I'd like to say. It's, again, trying to make sure that we're compliant with the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act and knowing, developing some type of plan for adjusting those compensations moving forward.
So we are voting to approve or not approve bid number 3920, the compensation classification and job analysis. And any further discussion? Then I'll call the vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Nay.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember B. Smith?
No.
The motion carries. We'll now move on to item number 9, and this is second reading and adoption by title only of Ordinance 4, Series of 2021. And this is in adjusting the stormwater rate for the city's stormwater utility enterprise. Again, this is the second reading.
It's 10B.
10B.
Mayor and council, this is a second reading. We don't have any additional public comment at this time, and staff would recommend passing on second reading.
Councilmember Meisner?
I'll do this again. Stormwater. Madam Mayor, Council, I move that we approve Ordinance 4, Series of 2021 on second reading.
Second.
There's been a motion by Councilmember Meisner, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Any discussion? I'll call a vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember B. Smith?
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you, council. We're now on item 10C, second reading and adoption by title only, Ordinance 5, Series of 2021. And this is approving an addendum to the master lease agreement with U.S. Bank Corp. Governing leasing and financing for police vehicles.
Mayor and council, again, this is a second reading. We don't have any additional information for this portion, and staff would recommend passing on second reading.
Councilmember Smith.
Madam Mayor and Council, I move that we approve ordinance number 5, series of 2021 on second reading.
Second.
There's been a motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Jaquez. Any discussion? Call the vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember B. Smith?
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you, council. Now for item 10D. This is introduction and first reading by title only of Ordinance 6, Series of 2021, entitled An Ordinance of the City of Canyon City designating the property known as Mount St. Scholastic Academy, located in planning areas 2 and 3 of the Scholastica Minor Subdivision, as a historic site, otherwise known as Mount St. Scholastica Academy.
And before we have the staff report, we are doing this very similar to what we did with Fremont National Bank. So the public hearing will actually occur at the second meeting because of notification requirements. So this, I'll turn it over to Lisa to do the staff report on first reading.
Hey, Lisa, can you turn your microphone on, please?
Sorry. Mayor and City Council, like Ryan said, we, due to notification of the property owners of the public hearing, we are required to give them notice 15 days prior to a public hearing. Since the commission did not meet to hear the findings of facts on January 27th, we didn't have enough time to notify the owner of a public hearing for this meeting. So that's why we're going to defer it until the 15th.
But we will go ahead and vote on the ordinance on first reading, correct?
Yes,
To
yes, you will
expedite the
still
process.
vote on first reading for both this item and the next item.
Councilmember Meisner.
So did you begin this conversation with saying we are in a public hearing?
That will happen next.
Right.
Yeah.
February 15th.
Yeah, it'll happen on the 15th.
So this is just the ordinance to designate.
Right.
Yep.
I understand that process, but I thought she opened up with saying that we were in a public hearing. So one of my questions to start with is, when you look at the property, I don't remember what that map looked like, but it seems like the green portion is what we're
Designating as a site,
designating
yeah.
as a historical?
Yep.
And how does that overlap with the,
So it
didn't they give
include-
us some kind of a basic plat at one time?
It's in here.
Where's it at?
So it doesn't, it's the second page of the staff report.
So that back part that's not green, that's where the new development of
Here.
single-family dwelling homes are going to be. Those aren't historical.
No, there was very little historic structures on that side of the property at any given point. I think at one point there was a barn that was probably taken down by the 1930s, 1950s, a gazebo in the 70s. But other than that, they were just temporary structures, if that.
Yeah, and Lisa, maybe it would help if you talked a little about the difference between designating a site versus designating a building.
So a site would include, in this case, there's multiple structures that are associated with one entity. In this case, it's the school. It was a campus. So there's two historic structures that are identified as this site, the residence hall, which is now over 50 years old, and the east building, which is also known as the Fine Arts Building. It was built in 1897. It's currently listed as a state historic property as well as on the National Registry of Historic Landmarks. So there's also two newer buildings that are still on the site, though they are not 50 years old, but they all are associated with Mount St. Scholastica and the Benedictine Sisters of Chicago. So it's not just the buildings, it's the whole area has been associated with the St. Scholastica for 111 years when it was a school.
So what's the advantage of designating essentially the land?
So the
Seems like it's-
advantage is if they had any interconnective, I want to say drainage or pipes or anything like that, there's, they can get or apply for grants to help improve that. They can also apply for grants, the roundabout in front. That's part of that whole area relating to the residence hall. They might be eligible for applying for state historic fund grants to help resurface that. That's a possibility, and foundation work.
Yeah,
I
it's
know.
not only the grants, but also potential for tax credits as well.
Yeah.
Right, and the property owner has expressed that this designation is going to be really key to the ability of this property to be developed.
Yeah.
I guess once we have this historical designation, we can't back it up.
Actually, you can delist it. If, for whatever reason, the owners or new owners decide to take off the original facade, there is a way you can delist it. Through another ordinance, I would guess.
So from a delisting standpoint, I would imagine that, if they receive grant funds or they receive tax credits, there's going to be some financial risk to them to not maintain the facility or the site the way it was historically designated. But again, as the mayor mentioned, this is something that the property owner is asking for.
My concern is, we've been dealing with this property ever since I've been on council, and I realize that the property owner is asking for this designation, but it seems like whenever we add historical designations, we complicate the rejuvenation process. And I don't want to be in a situation in a couple of years where now we've got a chunk of land that nobody can afford to do anything with because it has a historical designation.
Well, that concept might have some myth to it. Lisa, do you want to
Yeah.
touch on that?
So actually, they would have to, in order to maintain their status as a historic property, they do have to follow standards for
Right.
rehabilitation. I don't know if you're thinking of the property value would be so much more that they would not want it.
I think, are you referring to
are
like
you
you have
just-
to fix it just this way?
Yeah.
Just like it was in the
Yeah,
1800s, or
yeah,
else?
you don't have,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't necessarily have to do it exactly. You don't have to worry about interior. Any work on the interior doesn't fall within the standard Secretary of Interior guidelines for rehabilitation. It's just the exterior. They can request, if they wanted to be delisted and no longer get the tax credits or be eligible for grants to help improve or to rehabilitate their structure.
Well, and wasn't the program that we signed up for the Colorado, help me on this?
Certified local government?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It always
circle
gets me
yeah.
because it has no title that has anything to do with being historical. But the point of it was that it was really flexible.
Yeah,
and that
it is very
wouldn't
flexible.
have those stringent ties put to it so that it wouldn't be an encumbrance. It's exclusively a tool to make it doable.
Yeah, and since we are a certified local government now, the property owner can, be eligible for these grants that will help them to rehabilitate these structures in a way that maintains the historical integrity of these buildings
So,
and the site.
yeah, as a certified local government, we can designate local landmarks. And I think, Councilman Meisner, what you're getting at is more of the states or national, federal
Okay.
designations. There's a little bit more leniency and flexibility
Yeah.
with the local
All right.
designation.
Thank you.
Councilmember Reed.
So please correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but my understanding with this designation is it's just a tool. I mean,
Yep.
we're just basically giving the property owner another feather in the hat to be
Yep.
able to apply for grants, take
Yep.
care of tax money,
Yep.
or tax credits to be able to do what they're needing to do. But
Yep.
ultimately, I mean, if this owner decided to do something different, I have a hard time believing that he'd be requesting something that would make that property harder to sell. I mean,
Yeah, right?
it's St. Scholastica Properties kind of taking care of that itself,
Yeah.
is my opinion on that. But I don't see, and maybe I'm missing something, so I'd love to hear if that's the case, Councilmember Meisner, but I don't see what the downside or the risk of setting up this tool for that property owner could be. Am I missing something?
Now, when we went for the Historic Preservation Commission and certified local government status, it was to allow property owners to have access to these types of tools so they could do redevelopment.
Right, and I know there's businesses that have discussed wanting to move into that property once it's done. I mean, so it's just
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
tools, I guess.
Yeah.
Again, the property owner
Asked for it.
asks for, not just
Right.
ask for it, says, this is
the tool we
important
need.
to me.
Right, and we have the ability to give them the tool. So I guess to me, it just only makes sense that we would
And it's
help.
probably really important to our community that the history of that property that has a lot of dear memories to a lot of our citizens to this day does have some preservation.
Yeah, it's still part of living memory. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people that had graduated from that school.
It's part of our
Have fun.
identity.
Yep.
Councilmember Jaquez.
My question is this, I'm looking at the piece of paper that you have, and we've
Yes.
got some property there that's in green, and then we got some property there that isn't in the green. Do they own all the land all the way to Floral Avenue?
Yes, they do.
Okay, now then, just because of what you said, nowhere in all these documents do I see anything with regards to the distance that we're going to talk about that's in the green. In other words, I don't see that where, I see a lot of addresses with regard to that, but I don't see, how much land that's in the unshaded areas is theirs. And that's the part that I worry about, because when we look back at the old stuff that we signed a long time ago, my understanding is that's where they wanted to put townhomes and all this other stuff in, unless that's changed. But I don't see where the separation is.
It's actually in the nomination form. So there's addresses.
I know, I see addresses, okay,
Yep.
but the addresses don't tell me what I'm wanting to hear.
So-
Okay, I would like to know how much of the unshaded area is still going to be involved. And the reason I'm asking this is because when this landowner, if things keep going, and this landowner comes and wants to start doing what he wants to do in that back end, we don't actually know that that portion is still eligible for everything we did in the past to allow them to put those townhomes in.
Councilman Hawkes, if I can answer that question. In the ordinance, it references planning areas 2 and 3. When they came forward with the PDD, they specifically designated areas 2 and 3, and that would be representative of the green area there. Planning area 1 is the unshaded area there on, so that's the recorded map that we have with the county assessor.
Councilmember Meisner.
Frank, if this map helped me out. If you take that map with that green and brown map, they overlay each other.
Any other?
I found that in there somewhere.
Yes.
It's in the application form, their nomination form.
If there isn't any more discussion, I would like to entertain a motion. Councilmember Smith.
Madam Mayor and Council, I move that we approve Ordinance 6, Series of 2020 by title only on first reading.
Second.
There's been a motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Reed. Any discussion? Call the vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Okay, because it's going to come up again later on, I'll go ahead and say aye this time.
That was an aye.
Councilmember Meisner? Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember B. Smith?
Aye.
All right, the motion has passed on first reading. Thank you, council. Now we will go to item E, introduction and first reading by title only of Ordinance 7 of 2021, entitled An Ordinance of the City of Canyon City designating the structure known as the Residence Hall at the Mount St. Scholastic Academy, located at 615 Pike Avenue, Canyon City, Colorado, as a historic structure. And this is the residential hall at the Mount St. Scholastica Academy. Lisa?
Again, the public hearing for the city council will be held on February 15th regarding the residence hall of Mount St. Scholastica. The owners, again, are interested in designating this as a historic structure. Again, this is another tool to help them in tax credits for their work on restoring the historic building.
Okay, any questions from council? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion. Councilmember Smith.
Madam Mayor and Council, I move to approve Ordinance Number 7, Series of 2021 by title only on first reading.
Second.
A motion has been made by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Reed. Any discussion? Councilmember Meisner.
Just an idiotic comment. Why can't we have an ordinance that's properly completed?
With the ordinance number,
Yeah.
Oh,
we're
Wasn't there
working
on
on revising the procedures for submitting these into the Laserfish system, so they will.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll call a vote, please.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Yeah.
Was that a yay or a nay?
I said yes.
Councilmember Meisner?
Yay.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Councilmember B. Smith.
Aye.
Motion is carried on first reading. Thank you, council. We're now moving on to item number 11, and that's going into an executive session. I will turn that over to Councilmember Meisner to.
Unless somebody else wants it.
Unless somebody else wants to take it on.
Madam Mayor and Council, I move that City Council enter an executive session for the purposes to determine matters that may be subject to negotiations, develop a strategy for negotiations, and/or instruct negotiators pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024E, and to hold a conference with the city's attorney and water attorney to receive legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024B as in Bravo, concerning water delivery agreement.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll call a vote.
Councilmember Dennehy,
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez,
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Councilmember B. Smith.
Aye.
All right, thank you, council. We will now adjourn to executive session.